Good morning, Noonan. This is Jimmy Ellison, and you are listening to Faith Works, where each week we talk to different leaders in our community that are demonstrating that faith does indeed work. And I am thrilled today to have my good lifelong, are we lifelong friends?
Pretty much.
Pretty much, right?
Since about sixth grade.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. Scott Smith, if you're from Tyrone, you know him as Smitty. And if you grew up in the 80s, you know him as Smitty and Tyrone. But Scott Smith, who is one of my dearest friends in the world, he is here today. We're going to talk about his book, but we're also going to talk about just life and just growing up in Tyrone. And now he's a head wrestling coach over at Whitewater in Fayetteville, and just the impact that he's making in the lives of teenagers today. So, Scott, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Jimmy. I really enjoy being here with you, and just a unique experience. Thank you for having me.
That's right. So let's begin. We are not going to share any of our stories from growing up in Tyrone that are inappropriate. Right. All right? That's the deal. We have a pact, right?
All right, we got a deal. Sounds good.
Okay. So now, I know our mothers are listening. There are no inappropriate stories, just for the record. Hey, so let's bring us up to speed. You're still at Whitewater High School, coaching there?
Yes, I'll be starting in my fourth year right now at Whitewater High School. I'm the head wrestling coach and assistant football coach there. I also teach social studies, teach U.S. history, government and economics, and current issues is what I've been teaching the last 3 or 4 years.
And you had a good season with wrestling this year.
We did. We were region champs this year. Took about 5 guys to state. Mm-hmm. Had a real strong team. Looking forward to next year. Most of those guys are coming back.
I was going to say, you had told me earlier this year that did you have one senior?
I had one senior, that's right.
I mean, that's going to be a strong team coming back next year for you guys to win the region and only lose one starter.
We hope so. We still have a lot of work to do, but the kids really work hard, and they're excited about wrestling, so they're fun to be around.
Ron, that's so much like a coach. Well, we got a lot of work to do. I don't know. We got all of our varsity team coming back, but I don't know if we're even going to make it through the JV schedule this year. It's going to be tough.
They're going to win every game.
No, Vince Dooley, back in Georgia's heyday. Well, that punter, we're playing like a little single A little team in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, but their punter's one of the best punters in the country.
Yeah, that was Vince.
Yeah, you always find something. I don't know. It's going to be tough. No, we're not having. There's nothing guaranteed going in this. Anyway. Well, so you're doing the wrestling. Bring us up to speed with Wendy and the children and grandchildren.
Yes, so I'm married to my wonderful wife, Wendy. We're celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary this winter, mm-hmm. and we have 4 children. Our youngest is Chase. He's living with us, and he's working at a place called Clayton Fixtures. I have 2 daughters, Jamie and Nikki, who have given me granddaughters, so it's nice to be a grandfather.
That's great.
It's fun times.
That is so good. So good. So we want to talk about the book, and let's just start off. It's called The Good Coach. When did you get a vision for this book? When did the Lord, because I know I've read it, so I know it's faith-based, of course. So when did you hear from the Lord, okay, it's time to write a book?
Well, I started writing things down in my journal over the years. It's probably a 7-year process.
Are you a regular journaler?
I would say I'm sporadic at times. Mm-hmm. I always take notes of your sermons, of course.
Of course.
And just notes of different things that I hear. And as I started to read through the things I'd written down, I started to realize that a lot of these things apply to coaches. And that Jesus was a coach, and so he is the good coach. And I look back on his life with his disciples and the ministry he had, and it's really is a lot like what we do as coaches. And so I wanted to write something to encourage coaches.
Yeah, and you did it. It was so good. So you said it was a 7-year process. Is that what I heard you say?
It really was. From the time that I started writing in my journal to the time I got it published was probably 7 years.
Wow.
Probably a year and a half through the publishing process, where I contacted someone to help me get that done and type things up, send them to him. He'd send them back to me. Of course, I'd fix all the mistakes and all that. But it was a long process, but it was a interesting process. Definitely a learning experience for me. Never published a book before, and it was a neat experience.
That's great. What's some of the feedback you got on the books? Who has found it most? Has it been primarily read by coaches, or you have any non-coaches even who've responded to it?
Yeah, I think so. I think most responses have been from coaches. FCA has been a big supporter. They've bought my books in bunches and passed those out to coaches. One coach in South Carolina said he bought a couple hundred and spread those around South Carolina, and those coaches are having Bible studies, and that's kind of an encouraging thing to know that I can have an impact like that, and coaches that I don't even know that are sitting around trying to read through the life of Christ and see how they could apply what Christ did to their jobs. And that's one of the big reasons that I wanted to look at the life of Christ, because his leadership really exemplifies how we need to lead as coaches. A lot of times that's difficult. We lose perspective about what's important. Wins and losses, those are important, and those a lot of times our jobs depend on those wins and losses. But in the big picture, I think God doesn't really judge coaches like that, and he looks at the bigger picture.
You think that or know that?
Well, I know that. I know that.
Listen, I'm banking everything on that fact that he doesn't judge on wins and losses.
We're in a performance-based profession.
Yeah, and that's got to. I have a confession. All right, I have been asked to do countless devotions for sports teams over the years, and FCA related or pregame talks, and I was a chaplain at one time with Stars Mill football.
That's right.
I loved it. It's a challenge for me to talk to a team who's about to go out into battle, about to go and give it all they can to defeat their opponent, and then tie in this Christian message, because the Christian message is about Jesus. It's about your relationship with Jesus. It's about you sharing Jesus with others. It's about your growth. It's not about sports. It's not. How do you pull that together? So I've struggled. You can tell the David and Goliath story. Okay, this is David and Goliath. You're David. Get out there and whip them. You do that motivational thing. But the reality is for me. I've found it as a challenge to tie the two. How have you? How do you tie in your faith when you're talking to athletes getting ready to prepare?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Definitely I experienced some of the same things. When you think about the big picture of winning a game or a wrestling match, that's not very important in light of eternity. So, but still, you're a coach. It is important at that moment. It is important to those athletes to go out there and perform their best. And one of the things I think maybe is try to communicate that the talents you've been given as a athlete or as a coach, they're there to glorify God, and that's despite what the scoreboard might say. In the end, you want to be able to say with pride that you have played to the best of your ability or coached to the best of your ability, and what that did was glorify God. And give God the credit, because He has given us the ability. He's given me the ability to coach and give those athletes the ability to play. Absolutely,
and I think I think that's excellent to focus on the glory. How do you glorify God in this moment? And it's, I always appreciate people giving God glory when they win, but I also appreciate people. I heard, I think it was the quarterback at Clemson. He said, listen, I want to win. At the end of the day, it's not about winning for me. Right. And when he made some type of comment like that, and I thought, that's being the quarterback of Clemson, playing for a national championship. That's a pretty big statement to say. At the end of the day, it is about glorifying God with my life and living that out.
There's so many coaches out there at the college ranks and all levels that really have given me a good example of how to live and how to coach.
There's
a lot out there right now.
Absolutely. Now, we both had some great coaches at high school. We played football together. We wrestled together, of course, and we have Coach Riddle, Sam Riddle. You know, one of the things I love about our high school football days was boy, he invested in the relationships
He really
with
did.
with the players, and for me that modeled football is important, but you as a person is more important, and I can't help but think that is, you know. Again, very few people play football professionally who play in high school. Very few. Very few even play in college anymore. I mean, it's so competitive to even play at that next tier. But for a coach to say, hey, this is about building you up. This is about investing in a relationship. I mean, that's what I see when I talk to students that you've coached. I mean, that's been one of the things they've shared about you and their experience with you is that it is about the relationship. How do you practice that as a coach, building up relationships?
Well, thinking back, I realized the influence that Coach Riddle had on me as well.
Okay, good.
Not knowing that, when I was 17
and he lives
years
here
old,
in Newton. He's in here in Coweta
I know
County.
he's close
isn't he?
by. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
we need to track him down.
We do.
Yeah.
But, who would have ever thought that, I was 17 years old playing for Coach Riddle, that I would one day be a coach. But, now looking back, and I mentioned this in my book, is that he did have an impact on me.
Mm-hmm.
And the things he said matched what he did. You know, he just didn't talk a game. He lived it out. And as you mentioned, he valued our relationships. And he would take us fishing. When a lot of coaches don't do that today, but I think a lot of coaches do understand the value of building relationships, whether that means taking your team somewhere on a retreat that has nothing to do with the sport, just to get to know one another, or things like that. I've been involved in that as a coach. So, and I also have worked for head coaches on the football side that have been good models as far as that goes.
Yeah, I was talking to Coach Griffin. I guess it was last season, maybe even the season before. He had all the defensive. It seemed like all the defensive backs or that came over to his house. I don't know. He had a group of defensive players that came, and they just did a cookout. And I thought, how wonderful that is. Is that something you're seeing more and more coaches do?
Yes, and it's something we try to practice. I've tried to do that the last really several years of my coaching career, is have my position players over my
Are you
house.
quarterbacks? Linebacker coach?
I was outside linebackers. I'll be running backs this coming up year. So, but just over the years, I have always invited my position players and the wrestlers to my house and tried to get together with them. And one thing, my wife appreciates it. When she gets to know the kids, and she gets a face with a number. So this guy's not just number 25. He's a kid that's been to her house, and so it's very important to, I think, involve your family with what you do. So much time we spend with other kids and with our programs that, if you can get your family involved, it makes a big difference. So I was real fortunate to get all my kids involved in my coaching from a young age. My girls were my wrestling managers. Chase was on the sideline, Zach was on the sideline in the wrestling corner. So it's been really a neat experience to have a family aspect to that coaching.
Well, and Wendy is like the perfect coach's wife anyway. I mean, I see her love on those players, and I mean, the wrestlers. I mean, it's there she is in the stands every week. That's a very faithful, and I know that y'all have entertained. I know she loves that entertainment aspect. Mm-hmm. And how neat, Scotty, for the students, the student athletes, to see modeled a healthy husband and wife, and a model of family and stability. I mean, I've got to believe that's got to be one of the most impactful gifts you're giving these athletes, is that, hey, we're family. This is what our home looks like. This is how our home functions. That's a gift in itself.
You never know what impact that's going to have, on a kid. Maybe 10 years down the road, he looks back on him coming to Coach Smith's house and seeing that relationship with his wife. And so you just try to live your life out. You don't really necessarily have to force things on people or act a different way. You just act yourself. You be natural. and you know, hopefully, you know, the love of Christ comes through in your life and your coaching.
Yeah, that's great. That is great. So your book. Tell us when people ask about the book, say, "Hey, tell me about the book." How do you respond to that?
Well, I think there's two parts to the book. It's kind of broken down into perspective for coaches to have, and to me that means the way we look at things, is the lens of how we view things. And in coaching, you have to really have perspective on things, because sometimes you plan things that don't go as planned, and things change, and you've got to have the right perspective. And that's just like life, you know, how we have to have the right perspective on our life. And so many times, you know, I lose perspective. So I think being reminded of what's really important and how to handle things as a coach is a very important thing to know about. Mm-hmm. You can read about that in the book. And the next thing is principles, you know, specific things Jesus did as a leader. And
I love how you took this actual scripture and kind of broke it down with
right.
that.
You know, I believe, share a quick scripture, Matthew 4:19, Jesus is talking to his disciples. He says, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men." And I look at that and think that's a job description of a coach, because a coach wants his athletes to follow him. He wants to train them. That's the "I will make you" part. And then Jesus said he wants his disciples to be fishers of men. So I got to think that being a fisher of men for those disciples at that time in their life really wasn't a big priority. You know, they were fishers of fish, and being a fisher of men was a thing bigger than themselves.
That's good. That's real good.
And so when you bring a group of athletes together, you're asking them to give themselves to something that's bigger than themselves. You know, take away the stats, the tackles, the wins, the pins, the touchdowns, and let's focus on what's more important for the team.
Yeah, that's good. That is good. It's such a, I know there are a lot of, quote, team sports, but I love football, and that it is an ultimate team sport. You've got players who are on the field who never touch the ball.
That's right.
Who never, they're, you know, as two, you know, we were both offensive linemen, which I'm a little partial to offensive linemen. Right. Come on, let's be honest. Aren't they the best to coach?
Well, you touched the ball every play. You were the center.
I was a center until my senior year. They moved me to strong tackle.
Oh, that's right.
But my junior year, your senior year, we played side by side.
Mm-hmm.
You were left guard.
Nope, right guard.
Right guard. Okay, right guard. I know. It's only been 30 years.
Can you name the offensive line my junior year?
Your junior year, my junior year.
Oh, my senior year. Your junior year.
We had the tackles were Bubba and Frank.
Jeff Laws, Alan Ross were the tackles.
Oh, okay. So this is my I think in my senior year. Your my junior year. You're saying so it's Jeff and Alan. I was the center, and then who was the guard?
The left guard was Frank.
Frank. Yes. That's a pretty good offensive line.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Back in the day, that was a pretty good offensive line. My senior year, it was. And people are going to be tuning out because they don't care about my senior year. Let's get back to it. This is for lunch later. All right. So you're getting back to the book. This idea of using Jesus as the example. Tell us what if you think about a coach, what are some of the qualities of the coach that you highlight in the book that representing both coaching and Jesus leadership? What were some of the things that you pointed out?
Well, we've already mentioned the relationships is probably one of the biggest things.
Mm-hmm.
How that's key. You have to value relationships, and that the program is not more important than the person. You know, we're hired to build programs by our administrators and mm-hmm. things like that, but ultimately we're answering to God to build up people. So that's one big thing. And then but there's a lot of specific things like Jesus. One thing off the top of my head, I'm thinking that he really challenged his men and pushed them, and so they would face adversity. And I think as a coach, you have to do that. You have to put your athletes into adverse situations, so that when game time comes or when the rest of the match starts, there's going to be adversity right in front of them. So they're going to have to deal with that. So I think Jesus did that. I think he put his disciples through adversity to train them, to build them up. And that's a lot like we do as coaches.
That's good. That is really good. Well, we're coming up on a hard break, Scott. So when we come back, I want us to talk how you've seen the book. I mean, you've already mentioned that some coaches have used it for Bible study, but I want to talk about what do you see the future of the book? How are other ways we could possibly use it? And I want to hear from your perspective. When as a follower of Jesus, a coach, when have you had to rely on your faith to get you through a difficult season? So that's what we're going to talk about on the back side of the show. You're listening to Faith Works, and I'm Jimmy Ellison.
You've been around long enough to know good stuff when you hear it. That's why you're here now. Classic Hits, WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key.
Join us here, live from Noonan, Georgia, as we present the Health, Happiness, and Harmony Hour, every Wednesday from 10 to 11. I'm your host, Dr. Lewis Boynton. Please join us each week as we have new guests and talk about topics related to the psychological world. We're hoping that you will find interesting and helpful topics that will help you have more health, happiness, and harmony in your life. Join us every Wednesday from 10 to 11 at 99.1 WQEE Rock and Roll Radio.
Tune in the second and fourth Thursday each month for Know Your Rights. I'm your host, Charles Cobble, and we'll discuss your rights and have plenty of information on what those rights are. Every second and fourth Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on WQEE 99.1 FM.
Ever dreamed of being a radio DJ or hosting your own show? Now here's your chance. WQEE 99 Rock the Key is giving you an opportunity to host your own show. If you'd like to get your advertising message across the thousands of listeners throughout the area, here's your chance. Hosting your own show is the way to do it. Perfect for attorneys, realtors, churches, sports talk shows, and more. Contact 678-673-6318 for further information. Host your own show.
The biggest schools.
Touchdown, Penn State, Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State will win it.
The biggest games.
Kick is good. The Longhorns lead, intercepted at the goal line. The Dogs have picked it up.
Reliving the weekend on the gridiron. It's the College Football Rewind.
Throws over the middle, pass broken up, and the Huskies are going to win. The Gators get a pick six.
Download on Sunday mornings on Apple Podcasts.
This place, it's an insane asylum.
Search College Sports now.
All things River Dragons hockey this Tuesday on WQEE and WZEV. It's Swamp Fox Coaches Show at 6 p.m.
Hey, I'm Jimmy Ellison. I'm the pastor here at Noonan City Church. I want to thank you. You'll find as you walk through that we focus on three areas primarily. One is worship, small groups, and local missions. And our purpose is transforming lives for Jesus' sake, helping individuals experience that transformation. And we use these three areas, worship, small groups, and local missions, to help individuals experience that. You'll get a sense of who Noonan City Church is, and I hope that you'll come and worship with us soon. Take care, and God bless.
Around long enough to remember getting up to turn the channels on the TV? That's classic. Classic Hits, WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key.
Hey, this is Jim Ellison. Again, you're listening to Faith Works. Appreciate you tuning in. We are in a conversation with my good friend Scott Smith. Those of us from Tyrone in the mid-'80s know him as Smitty. Scotty, thanks for being here today. You have written a book called The Good Coach, where you take these concepts of Jesus' life and apply them to coaches. And man, I was thrilled to hear so many people have read your book, and so many people have bought in bulk to pass out through FCA. I know that we did that as a church. We bought and made sure all the coaches over at Noonan, I think Noonan High School, we bought them for all those coaches there. And so have you gotten some good positive feedback from coaches, people calling you and touching base with you about it? Local, I know you said some from out of state, but how about some local coaches?
Yeah, I have. You see a lot of coaches. I've been coaching now for 29 years. You build relationships with coaches. You'll see them at a wrestling tournament or on the sideline, pre-game, post-game. You get to have conversations with coaches, and it's so that a lot of them know that I've published a book and have read the book and get a lot of positive feedback from those guys.
That's great. That's encouraging, I know. Scotty, each of us goes through challenging seasons, each of us. And one of the questions I ask all the guests when they come in each week is, tell me about a time that you went through a challenging season and it was your faith that pulled you through. You truly felt God's hand holding you, walking you through a season. You want to share? I know your book shares some, but what would you what would you share in that?
As a coach, there's things that I've experienced and personally. So I guess I'll
you can share with both. You share for both.
So. First of all, we lost our son Zach back in 2011.
Yeah.
So you're aware of that. And Zach was 20 years old. He was in the Navy, and Zach took his life. So that was a time where, obviously devastating, but our faith brought us through that time. I see how God's hand, through the body of Christ, picked us up. My wife was a strong example and an anchor of her faith and our faith as well. So that was definitely a time where I saw God's hand just literally just picking me up and healing me. So that was a huge time in my life where my faith got me through. I think professionally speaking, you need to look at, we mentioned this earlier, how coaches' lives and jobs depend on wins and losses in a lot of ways. And so when you experience a season of loss, on the scoreboard type loss, those are challenging times. And
yeah.
So I definitely have been through times in that in my career where losses begin to stack up, and you begin to question yourself and question what you're doing, and you just really have to I think recognize the fact that the devil is the accuser. Even when we lost Zach, in both cases, when we lost Zach, when you lose games, such a big difference in those two things. Obviously, one's definitely a lot more important, but the accuser, the devil, is going to accuse you.
Mm-hmm.
But in both cases, I could recognize how the devil would try to come in and accuse me or my wife of doing something wrong or not doing something. And the same thing goes for when you're a coach. When you begin to lose, you look at what you're doing, and you begin to, if you're not careful, you hear the lies of Satan who's there to accuse you.
And most of the time, Satan is speaking through those parents in the stands.
Yes.
Let's just call it like it is. Where's your wife? I mean,
yes, my wife will. She will not put up with that.
I pray
some words too.
I pray for Wendy during football season. I'm thinking, those parents who are mumbling have no idea the giant they're about to awaken, talking about the coaches.
Yeah, she's a trooper. I mean, it's funny. She sits with all the other coaches' wives. All the other coaches' wives kind of hang together. But,
yeah.
Wendy was voted as the coach's wife that was most likely to cuss at a football game, and it would be towards one of their parents that And most times these parents have great intentions, but they're just misinformed about a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's I think and I certainly don't know because I've not lived it, of course. However, I have lived close to the lives of coaches, and I know fairly certain the amount of hours that you all put in, and it just people they have no clue if they've not lived it. They have no clue of the amount of energy that you all put into coaching, and it's year round, and the wrestling, getting back after tournaments late and waiting till every child gets picked up. That's and then going back the next morning. I mean, people have no clue of the responsibility that's involved with that. So every time I hear a parent complain, I always defend the coaches, no matter what. No matter what, I defend the coaches. Nobody wants to lose. No, I mean, it's not like they're intentionally losing. So get off them. Get off them there. So tell me about the book in the sense of what should I have asked you. I like to ask the question to guests. What should have asked you about the book that I didn't?
Let me think about that for a second. Well, it could be used. It's not just for coaches necessarily.
Yeah.
It's for leaders in general. It's the first chapter documents our story about losing Zach and our testimony. So that's in there as well. So I think it applies to leadership in general. It applies to faith. It's a story of hope, I believe. Yeah. Especially the chapter that documents all.
It's almost a leadership book as much as any. I mean, it's a Christian leadership of principles of leading others. I mean, so if there's anybody that you lead, including yourself, I mean, the book would be, I think, applicable to.
Yeah, I agree, and that's kind of how it's been advertised, and you can access the book on Amazon.com, and there's questions at the end of each chapter that can be used for group type
small
settings.
Group. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. That all works out well there. So, Scott, you're tell me about the how you walk the line between, because I know in the public school system there's a line. You can't you cannot actively say, hey, I want to talk to you about Jesus, but you can bring up faith. Faith can still be part of the conversation when it's initiated by the student. Can you tell me a time when you had a student, an athlete, come and seek you out asking faith-related questions?
Yes. Way back in my career, a long time ago, I remember having to, I was in my 20s, and I remember having to go, the head coach kind of gave me this responsibility. And I look back now, and I think that's, that was a God-ordained decision. The head coach asked me to go pick up a guy, take one of our athletes to the courthouse as he stood before the judge, and I can't, it's been such a long time, I can't exactly remember what all was going on, or if there was a fine that was being paid, or.
But he didn't have any parents there?
Yeah, it was just me and
Wow.
the athlete, and
Wow.
so that gave me an opportunity to talk to the kid about God being a just God,
Yeah.
and when there's a sin, we have sin, and there's a penalty for that sin, and so there's a lot of parallels between our judicial system and the
Sure.
penalty being having to be paid, and so
Absolutely.
it led to a conversation I got to have with that young man, and I think the line, just to answer your question about where you draw the line, I don't worry about it so much. I mean, I don't publicly, speak necessarily about Jesus. In other words, let me say it this way: I don't use my platform as a coach to just speak about Jesus. Now, Jesus might come through my conversations; he might be mentioned. So if that happens, I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
One thing is that I'm 29 years into this, so getting close to retirement. So you worry about less now than you did, say, 15 years ago. But there is a line that you can't cross. But I think that the biggest thing kids need to see is they need to see somebody that's not a youth minister, that's not a preacher, walking out their faith.
Absolutely. That's huge. And we don't talk about this. We're a little bit with Coach Riddle earlier, but the influence that coaches have it's just overwhelming. You think of the influence that you have in the lives of these athletes, these student athletes. It's more so than, I believe these students that are in the church. I mean, for me, there's let me rephrase that. I think I have influence in the lives of students at our church. It's a smaller influence compared to the influence you have in the lives of your kids. You're with them every day.
Right.
To some degree, they want to please you.
That's right.
To some degree, they're going to listen to you. You do have their undivided attention. Now, they can choose not to play or not, but at the same time, I mean, you've got to coach them to the point they want to play for you. Of course, at the same time, they're there knowing, okay, you're our leader, you're our coach. What do you have to say to me? So there's this huge influence there. Does that sometimes overwhelm you, Scotty?
Well, I wouldn't say overwhelm me. You kind of get caught up in the moment with, trying to lead the program and do what's best for the program and the kids, and so you don't think about that a lot of times. But when you do slow down to think about that, it is it's encouraging. Sometimes it could be an overwhelming responsibility when you think about it. How I might be the only father figure, or I might be the only representation of who God truly is in their life. So that's a huge responsibility that I have to be careful. I don't want to misrepresent who God is.
Absolutely. One of our boys' coaches over the years, we were always intentional as parents to show our appreciation to the coaches. Not necessarily that they knew the sport well and they knew how to coach the sport well, but the influence and the impact they made in our lives, the lives of our boys, just from life. Neither of my boys they're like their daddy. They were not great athletes. And so I always say I really wasn't an athlete. I was an offensive lineman. So. But the boys, they did fine, of course, in sports, but they didn't play really in college at all. So the point is, but they learned about life.
That's right.
They learned about just how important relationships are, and working together, and dealing with conflict, and loving each other. And I mean, they learned those qualities on the field and on the match. On the mats with wrestling. It's just so much more. Sports is so much more than about sports.
It really is, and you never know how much you can influence a kid. You never know when that's gonna click for some kids.
Yeah.
It could be years later. One of the things that my wife Wendy did for me is she prepared a birthday present where she got probably 10 or 12 former athletes of mine to respond to an email and write back, and how I influenced their life. And so she gave that to me at a time. It's actually one of those down years on the football end where we weren't winning a lot of games. So that was a big encouragement to see that regardless of the wins and losses that were going on right then, I could look back and 10 years ago see the influence that I've had on these kids.
That is so good. I'm so glad she did that. That's a special gift, gift, and good for those guys to share that encouragement with you. We've got less than 5 minutes, Scotty, so I want to talk about Tyrone, Georgia.
All right.
And so if you're listening, you don't want to hear about Tyrone, this is time to cut off. But I want to talk about, if I got you alive on the air, I want to talk about Tyrone real quick. Hey, tell me, when you think about our growing up, what's one or two nuggets that we learned growing up in Tyrone that has been just monumental in our lives today? Things that we learned in that environment, small town USA, and how does that how does that apply to our lives today? But maybe something a lot of kids don't have. Can you think back on that?
I think maybe just the blue collar mentality, that we grew up with. How you got to work hard at what you do, whether it's pastoring or coaching. I feel like that we both learned that lesson. That
our parents.
That's right.
We're all blue collar. Yeah.
They were blue collar, and you don't realize that at the time that you're learning this lesson, but when you get old enough and mature enough, it kind of clicks in. Hey, this I learned that back in Tyrone years ago in the 80s, how hard work has to precede success, and you have to have that. And I feel like that that was a big, huge nugget I learned.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I could not agree more. I tell folks the hours my dad worked. He was a machinist and his professional career and welder, and the hours on his feet every day and clocking in, and I think he worked 40 hours. No, excuse me. He worked 11 hours a day, 5 days a week, and so that was 55 hours. And then he worked an additional 8 hours on Saturdays. So you do the math on that.
Yeah.
And he worked, and he did that every day. He got up at 3:45 every morning.
Wow.
No wonder he was ready to go to sleep. Scotty, you've been over at my house many a time.
At your house when he falls asleep.
When Calvin was asleep.
Right.
Oh, gosh.
Now I know why.
Yeah, that's good. Well, man, it has been so good having you on the show today.
It's been nice. I've really enjoyed it.
We wish you well, continued success with the book. And tell us again where we can find The Good Coach.
You can find it on Amazon.com. My name's Scott Smith, The Good Coach, and it's available on Amazon.
Amazon, that is so good. Can you get the Kindle?
Yes, you can.
Okay, great. So it's a
both
Kindle
copies.
version. Okay, excellent. Hey, I love you, buddy.
Love you too, man.
Thank you so much for coming on. Friends, you've been listening to Faith Works. We'll be back next week. Take care, and God bless.
Thanks for tuning in to Faith Works with Pastor Jimmy Ellison from Noonan City Church. Tune back in here next week for another edition of Faith Works.